Hello everyone, you are on the Gaze For You channel, and today we're analyzing the movie A Quiet Place by director, screenwriter, and actor John Krasinski. We'll try to address the main questions that arise during viewing. First of all, where did the Death Angels come from? What are their goals? And who created such universal bioweapons? What will the third film be about? Where did the army? Scientists go, why did humanity plunge so quickly into post-apocalypse? Although, in reality, it's not quite like that. Great Britain, Taiwan, Japan are successfully fighting off alien invaders, and most likely we'll see this in the third film. Yes, there are many questions about the film. There are movie mistakes, although personally, in my opinion, sometimes these are nitpicks. Krasinski used a very interesting approach to making movies, namely his analysis of criticism after the release of the first film. John didn't start writing the script for the sequel, but began by studying the comments, what the audience didn't like, what questions they had, and only then started working on the second film. In the sequel, he decided to show how the monsters got to Earth, and the reason for that was a meteor shower, although this was clear from the first film and newspaper. He showed surviving communities, which are often located on islands, and this is a very important detail, which you will understand later. But he missed the question of war and the army. We'll see that in the third film. Well, I suggest you get comfortable. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, be sure to subscribe so as not to miss anything. And I'm starting with theories, answers, and interesting facts. First, I want to discuss the third film. And what will they show us? The continuation, just like the second part, will be divided into two temporal segments. The moment of the first contact with the Death Angel. Although there is no exact name for this extraterrestrial bioweapon, the newspapers have hinted that it was the press that gave them such a nickname. The second segment of the film will be dedicated to the Abbott family, but as known, the first part of the film will be the most interesting for all viewers. It will begin with scientists and events 3 years before the meteor shower and the beginning of the post-apocalypse. In the ice of Greenland, a strange object will be found. At first, everyone thought it was an ordinary meteorite, but a sphere was found at the crash site. It wasn't dangerous or radioactive, but it was certain that it was extraterrestrial technology. Most scientists had no idea what this object was, but one of them noticed that the sphere emitted light of certain, invisible to the human eye, spectra. The range of wavelengths and frequencies was significantly different, and he assumed that it was a signal. There is logic in this, as using light as a means of transmitting information is the best solution. Radio waves and other signal methods are limited by speed, while light will reach the target faster than anything else. His assumptions were based on the fact that this transmitter was a probe that transmitted information about the atmosphere, flora, fauna, and geography. It simultaneously scanned the planet and immediately transmitted data. And at that moment, it was already clear that this was the first part of the attack. Someone had sent a planetary-level spy. A year later, NASA noticed a cluster of meteorites heading towards Earth in one of the space surveillance centers. It didn't look like a regular meteor shower because they flew at different intervals, but the mass of the objects was the same. It is clear that the mass significantly differed from all those celestial bodies that people had previously found in space. Despite their large size, the objects were too light. An alliance was formed, and a state of emergency was declared. Most countries took precautionary measures. China was the first to refuse cooperation. This was the first reason for the rapid defeat of the army. The countries could not unite properly. 2 years later, the first objects entered the atmosphere. They had to fall in such a way that the area of impact was maximized. Orbital rotation of the Earth helped in this. Since all meteorites flew in one direction and landed in one place, it would lead to other consequences. Therefore, the meteor shower lasted for 24 hours. It was during this time that the Earth made a full turn. Different intervals of falling helped the Death Angels land in precisely defined places. This was also shown to us in the second film through news channels, indicating that the fall had already occurred in certain states.
What happened?
A bomb, I think.
The invaders calculated everything down to the smallest detail, so that at a certain moment, each of the meteorites would fall, depending on the rotation of the planet around its axis. Thus, they excluded the possibility of falling into the oceans and did not allow any part of the land to be missed. The first to understand this was Britain. They acted in the smartest way, using rockets launched into space. They changed the trajectory of all objects while approaching Earth, so that none of the meteorites fell on their territory. And since it is an island, the water served as an excellent barrier to further developments in favor of the people. As Death Angels cannot swim properly, Japan, Taiwan, and most countries surrounded by seas and oceans acted in exactly the same way. Therefore, these countries managed to avoid the attack and are considered safe. The first countries to fall and lose in the first days of the invasion were China and India. The reason for this was panic and a large population. China's calculations were based on the army and weapons, which turned out to be completely ineffective. All firearms, tanks, tanks, aerial bombs were useless. They couldn't penetrate the chitinous armor covering the entire body. Fire, radiation, chemicals, nothing helped in the war. If the creatures could survive in open space and withstand the fall, then it's clear that killing them isn't that easy. Here's one important moment that was shown to us in the second movie: the fall of the meteorite. In fact, it's not even a meteorite. You can hear the sound of the object flying. Strange, yes, but there's no sound of impact on the ground. No explosive wave. Although the external mass of the body seems huge and it should have turned half the state over upon falling, that didn't happen. It's all because the object contained no stone or metal. It's simply a large cluster of death angels. Ants use a similar method of transportation when crossing water barriers. Similarly, death angels move in open space, forming a sphere from their bodies, which most people perceived as a meteorite. This explains a lot. That's why scientists couldn't understand why, with such huge dimensions, the object had such a low mass. Death angels don't need food, water, or air. They're an ideal organism as a bioweapon. But there's one downside: resonance. The only sense they had in their arsenal was hearing. They can hear for several kilometers, but angels can't stand sound of certain frequency. Germany was the first to notice this. Therefore, their scientists managed to build sound air probes, which outwardly resemble meteorological probes. They constantly repel death angels by emitting a constant, unbearable sound frequency. Thus, almost the entire territory of Germany is a safe place. Moreover, they successfully used this discovery in liberating new territory. But the situation on two continents, Africa and Australia, is completely different. There, almost the entire population has been wiped out. I hope all this information will be shown to us in the continuation, where exactly the meteorites came from, and how humanity is waging war against the invaders. Well, it's unlikely that we'll be introduced to the Masters anytime soon, because it's obvious to everyone that there's a highly advanced civilization behind it all. And they must have thought out a method of controlling their dogs, since the creatures are clearly lacking in intelligence. They are programmed only for one thing: killing, and it's not entirely clear how they will behave when the Masters arrive on Earth. Therefore, there must be a way of control. From here, I have two theories. The first one is sound control. It's based on the idea that if there's a sound that the death angels can't stand, then perhaps there's a frequency that calms them down, or even makes them fall asleep. This is an excellent method of control. Perhaps this sound was present during the fall in the beginning of the second movie, A Quiet Place. Perhaps there's a sound source at the center of the meteorite that kept all the death angels in stasis during the entire flight, and after landing on Earth, it got destroyed. The monsters woke up and started doing what they were created for: destroying all living things. The second theory is time-based. It's based on the assumption that there's control through the lifespan. Death angels don't eat, don't drink, and rumor has it they don't even have a digestive system or organs of vision. They don't need oxygen. Yes, they probably don't even have lungs. For an organism to exist in an active state for a long time, energy and nutrients must constantly be supplied. Since this doesn't happen, their lifespan is likely to be limited. This is an excellent method of control. By the time the main crew of the reasonable civilization arrives on Earth, their bioweapons will simply die out by then. I think this method is more reasonable and not as problematic. What do you think? Which theory is more plausible? Write in the comments. John Krasinski promised to devote time to these open questions in the third movie. According to him, he wants to expand the lore and build his own cinematic universe. And in fact, there's plenty of room for development. After all, in reality, they haven't shown anything in the movies yet, just the story of one family. But how it will develop in the third movie, I honestly don't know yet, just like the number of movies. One thing is clear. At the very end, the Death Angels will start dying out, people will joyfully begin to leave their shelters, have fun, clap, make noise. But the joy won't last long. Alien ships will appear in the sky, the cleansing time is coming to an end, and a new phase of invasion begins. On one of the ships, the airlock opens, and there stands a humanoid creature. The camera zooms in, and it's David from the movie Prometheus. Joking, of course. I know that many people didn't like the movie, and I agree that at times it was far from perfect. In particular, everyone dislikes the behavior of the character. Personally, I'm not going to criticize because this is the director's first large-scale work. Secondly, the film's budget was $17 million, and the box office was $340. I think you all understand that the film was quite successful. I would like to consider a few more theories. The first one is about the brains of the Death Angels. I think all their thinking and perception of reality are based on sound. So over time, they learn to hunt humans and distinguish external sounds from animals and the wind, for example. This would explain why they are not distracted by external noise, bird songs, or the sound of waterfalls. If that weren't the case, we would see a perpetual battle of the monster with water. So I'm sure 100% that the monsters can learn and distinguish human noise. The second theory, which I didn't like, is based on the fact that these monsters lived on a planet that, for some reason, was destroyed, and they survived on debris, randomly ending up on Earth. This would make sense if the creature is reproduced, fed, and had some signs of intelligence. On the contrary, it completely denies that they are not bioweapons. They are killing machines. I also have questions, just like you do. For example, if they don't need oxygen and don't have lungs, then if they end up in the water and their anatomy is not at all designed to swim, then they don't need it. They can calmly move slowly along the bottom of the reservoir, although they will be completely deaf there. The third film will be released in the spring of 25, with John Krasinski as the producer. According to him, the sequel will be very different from the first two films, the budget will be much bigger, and we will get all the answers. Nevertheless, it will not be the final one, so we can expect not just one more film, but several. I would like the third film to be directed by George Miller, after his movie Mad Max, Fury Road. I'm sure he could turn a primitive script into a masterpiece. Regarding the fact that they are not an unbeatable type of bioweapon and not the strongest invaders, I disagree. In my top list of who is stronger, I gave them only 10th place, losing to the Xenomorphs from the movie Alien. Well, whom I gave the first place, write in the comments, and I will share the full video with the top who is stronger. Thank you all for your attention.